and it will walk within that shaft, and it will show to us for the first time the interior of the pyramid. And it will reveal the mystery that we are going to reveal tonight to everyone.
A sealed stone room inside the Great Pyramid has finally been breached after 4,500 years of silence. No flashy treasure, no inscriptions, just precision stonework and a deliberate emptiness that stunned the experts who opened it. What was this place? A sacred void? A lost archive? Or a hidden engineering key that kept the monument alive for millennia? Using muon scans and a micro-robot, a team slipped through a fist-wide borehole and stepped, virtually, into history. In this video, we dig into the revelations, the clues everyone missed, and the unnerving possibility that the emptiness was the point. The void that shouldn't exist. For centuries, the Great Pyramid of Giza was considered one of the most thoroughly explored monuments on Earth. Every corridor, every chamber, and every shaft had been mapped and remapped since antiquarians first crawled inside centuries ago. Scholars argued that there were no more secrets, no more locked spaces waiting to be discovered. Yet in 2017, an international coalition known as the Scan Pyramids Project overturned that assumption. Using cutting-edge technology borrowed from particle physics, they peered into the limestone heart of the pyramid and saw something that should not exist. A massive void above the Grand Gallery, hidden in plain sight for 4,500 years. The tool that made this possible was cosmic ray muon radiography, a method that tracks subatomic particles as they pass through solid structures. Unlike traditional excavation, muons do the work invisibly, passing through stone and revealing density differences. For archaeologists, it was a miracle of modern science, an X-ray powerful enough to see into a world that had been sealed since the reign of Pharaoh Khufu. The data came back slowly, pixel by pixel, until an outline emerged. What they found was not a crack, not an accident of geology, but a deliberately carved anomaly stretching nearly 30 meters. Its scale was astonishing, almost mirroring the dimensions of the Grand Gallery below. This discovery caused an immediate sensation in the Egyptological community. If the builders had made a space like this, how come no ancient record ever mentioned it?
New secrets of ancient Egypt's greatest structures. The pyramids.
There seemed to be no way into any known passageways or chambers, nor did this appear in all those lengthy surveys the modern researchers had been compiling for ages. It was almost as if the builders went to extra lengths to create a hidden room, and then even greater lengths to erase all evidence of its existence. Some felt this silence to be more disturbing than the very void itself. Speculation flared like wildfire. Could this be the sought-after burial chamber of Khufu itself? The gory resting place of the pharaoh who topped the pyramid, whose age would define an era? Or was it something much more practical, a structural cavity which acts to relieve the crushing weight of millions of tons of stone pressing down from above? Both theories stood, but did not cover all the bases. If this had merely been an engineering solution, then why all the secrecy? Why hide it entirely from accessible passageways, when other relieving chambers were left open above the king's chamber? If it were ceremonial, what did it serve, and why would it be left completely undecorated? The very location of the void added to its mystery. It was just above the Grand Gallery, one of the architectural wonders of the pyramid, a steeply sloping corridor that alone may have symbolic significance. To create a void of nearly the same dimensions above such a feature would almost suggest some sort of intention. It starts to sound like a reflection or echo of the gallery below. Was it to reflect the earthly and celestial above, where the soul would rise to the heavens, while below the gallery would convey the body of the dead king? Or was it all decorum, a trick chamber meant to befuddle would-be tomb robbers, giving them false hope of searching an empty void while the real burial lay far? Most concerning to the experts was that the very existence of such a chamber contradicts the aforementioned assumptions about pyramid construction. For decades now, it is claimed by many scholars that they have unraveled the architectural logic of the Khufu monument itself, its chambers, shafts, and alignments all having a structural purpose. This completely unknown, massively unknown space enters that narrative and demands contrition from all concerning the fact that the pyramid blueprint is still far more complicated, far more mysterious than previously assumed. The scans were bold, but whispers from the stone and texts suggested we should have known it was there all along. Clues in the stone and the stars. The void above the Grand Gallery may have shocked the modern world, but in truth, the pyramid had been whispering about its existence for decades. Anyone who knew where to look could see the hints left behind by its builders. Cryptic messages carved into stone, blocked passageways that led to nowhere, and ancient texts that spoke of hidden halls whose locations were never identified. When taken separately, these signs seemed like oddities, but viewed together, they form a trail of evidence that suggests the pyramid was never meant to reveal all of its secrets openly. One of the earliest and most tantalizing clues came not from 2017, but from the early 1990s, when German engineer Rudolf Gantenbrink sent a small robot named Upuaut 2 into the narrow shafts of the so-called Queen's Chamber. These shafts, no wider than a human hand, puzzled archaeologists because they didn't lead outside the pyramid, nor did they appear to serve any structural purpose. For over 60 meters, the robot crawled upward through the stone until its path was blocked by something extraordinary, a small limestone door fitted with 2 mysterious copper pins. The discovery became known as the Gantenbrink door. Behind it lay only speculation. Was it a symbolic barrier, a secret chamber, or a ritual seal? No one could say for certain, but it established a pattern. Pathways deliberately closed off, spaces constructed not to be entered but to be hidden. Then there were the builder's marks, graffiti which seemed so dry and ordinary, but had found its way into the esoteric corridors of construction and into the Great Pyramid. These red ochre inscriptions were left, for example, by work crews well over 4,000 years ago, mostly recording practical ones, team names or assembly guidelines. Yet one phrase stood out across the years: those who guard the secret. Once dismissed as poetic pride, the words took on an entirely new weight after the void's discovery. What were they guarding? What could ancient workers have scrawled when they penned such mediocrity? Those who guard the secret. If so, they held it up not just by invasive stone, but by deafening silence. The texts were there, the funerary texts, together with Old Kingdom records that referred to enigmatic places with names like Hall of Stars and Room of Judgment. Scholars have always argued whether these were mere symbolic descriptions or could also refer to actual physical spaces inside the Great Pyramid complexes. After the year 2017, some Egyptologists said the void was floated above by the Grand Gallery, obviously aligning itself with those sacred titles. The Hall of Stars, in particular, suggests a connection with the celestial heavens as a place where a pharaoh's soul might rise to join the gods in an enshrouding starry sky. However, the newly discovered chamber appeared for a physical embodiment of such an idea, a holy void sealing into the heavens. All the blockades, copper-pinning doors, codes in graffiti, and texts lead into a picture. The Great Pyramid spoke of more than just stone stacked for eternity. It coded architecture. Every shaft, chamber, and passage served a double function, one way for the living and the other way for the dead. The secrets of the pyramid were not just accidents waiting to be discovered, but deliberate mysteries intended to exploit wonder and guard knowledge. For all the frustration in modern research, the ancients left just enough to raise endless curiosity and not enough to deliver the truth. And so the Egyptologists were left for decades with 2 things: with theories and fragments, signposts toward a larger truth they could not reach. Hints were everywhere, access was nowhere, until a microlab the size of a shoebox found a legal, surgical way in. Horus, the fist-wide gateway. When the Ministry of Antiquities finally gave approval to investigate the mysterious void, the challenge was obvious. How do you explore a sealed chamber inside a 4,500-year-old wonder without damaging it? The Great Pyramid isn't just a monument. It's a fragile giant that has endured earthquakes, erosion, and the probing hands of treasure hunters for millennia. One wrong move could have caused irreversible harm. The solution was bold yet delicate: a surgical borehole no larger than a human fist, and through it, a micro-robot designed for precision and silence. The machine, nicknamed Horus after the falcon-headed sky god, was no ordinary robot. Roughly the size of a shoebox, it carried the tools of a mobile laboratory. Its panoramic high-definition camera could capture details invisible to the human eye. Laser scanners mapped the interior in 3 dimensions, while thermal sensors detected minute variations in temperature, often signs of hidden voids or unseen cracks in the limestone.
Researchers advanced high-frequency radar mapping under Egypt's famous pyramids.
A flexible cable tethered Horus to the outside world, providing both power and a live feed, ensuring every second of its journey was recorded and studied. It wasn't just an explorer, it was an archaeologist, an engineer, and a witness rolled into one. Even if Horus is ready for action, the actual test is in the pyramid. Ancient stone is unpredictable. The borehole must have been drilled with surgical precision, avoiding natural stress lines in the limestone. To have a hole merely 20 centimeters wide sounds simple, but for a structure weighing almost 6 million tons, even a tiny vibration might provoke shifts that might threaten the integrity of the pyramid. Preparation for rehearsing this one act had been going on for months. Engineers built a full-scale replica of the drilling path and repeatedly inserted the robot into this model until the maneuver was flawless in order to practice this act. Operative Day was one of the days where high tension was reserved for matters that can only be considered equivalent to space launches. As the robot was lowered into the fist-sized shaft, archaeologists, engineers, and officials crowded the monitors. The chamber beyond had been closed since the time of Khufu. The men who built it, never dreaming it would be possible for another gaze to pierce its darkness. All movements were measured in centimeters. Dust stirred. The tool marks of workers 45 centuries ago flashed across the screen. The air was almost crackling with anticipation. For a moment, it was claustrophobic, with tight limestone walls pressing in on either side as the robot changed its angle to navigate past ancient irregularities. The borehole opened slightly, revealing evidence of careful workmanship. The blocks had been shaped with human intention, even as if the builders had expected a space beyond. And then suddenly, as if by intuition, the narrow stone throat opened up, and Horus slipped into a darkness vast enough to swallow the camera's beam. Gasps filled the control room as the first blurry outlines of the chamber came into view. The light from Horus's lamp cut across dark stone surfaces untouched since the days of Khufu's court. Dust swirled like a ghostly veil in that beam. Centuries of speculation had led to this moment, and yet none were prepared for what appeared on screen. An image devoid of glittering treasures, elaborate murals, or golden sarcophagi awaiting rediscovery. It depicted something far more shocking, an emptiness so deliberate that it seemed louder than any decoration. And then came the shock. The chamber's message wasn't written in gold, it was written in absence. The architecture of emptiness. The moment Horus's camera revealed the void's interior, the mood in the control room shifted from exhilaration to confusion. The space existed, yes, but it was bare, eerily bare. No sarcophagus, no funerary treasures, not even a shard of pottery or a fragment of paint. Just smooth limestone walls, a corbelled ceiling, and a silence that felt intentional. It was the kind of silence that doesn't happen by accident. In a structure where nothing was wasted, emptiness itself had to mean something. The walls were striking in their precision. Crafted from massive blocks of limestone, they lacked the decorations seen in burial chambers, but bore the marks of careful,
in the relieving chambers above the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid, too, as ancient graffiti.
Deliberate craftsmanship. They weren't rough support walls thrown together as an afterthought. They were finished surfaces, symmetrical and exact. The ceiling added another layer of intrigue. Instead of a simple flat design, it was corbelled, each stone layer slightly overlapping the one below, creating a primitive arch. In Egyptian architecture, corbelling wasn't ornamental. It was a protective technique, used only when a space was meant to withstand immense pressure. The builders had gone to great lengths to safeguard this room, but why safeguard something destined to be left empty? On the chamber floor, Horus's laser scans revealed a subtle but unmistakable detail, a shallow rectangular depression carved into the stone. At first glance, it seemed unremarkable, yet the edges were too straight, the lines too deliberate to be a natural feature. This was not random, it was intentional, and though the cut made it seem as if something had rested here once before, or perhaps even that the cut itself was the therapeutic aspirational religion, perhaps it represented the base for a wooden trunk that had long since decayed. Or perhaps it was nothing more than a ceremonial platform for an object. Some theorists may go as far as to suggest an altar-like marker, a real place meant to frame emptiness itself as sacred. The chamber yielded other small yet enigmatic clues. Thermal sensors showed that the north wall retained heat somewhat longer than the other walls, indicating possible differences in density or perhaps the existence of a cavity beyond. On the southern side, an irregular but oddly straight seam ran from the floor to the ceiling. To an untrained observer, this may appear to be a natural crack, but to an archaeologist, it could signify something else, an obstructed passageway, sealed with the same precision that concealed the chamber itself. If true, this void may not even be isolated, but could be part of a wider network of such spaces. And so the mystery deepened. The void had been found, its interior mapped, its features catalogued, but its purpose? That question remained sealed as tightly as the chamber itself, which leaves us with the ultimate riddle. Why create a room meant never to be touched, never to be filled, and never to be seen for 4,500 years? Why seal a room forever? Once the chamber's emptiness was confirmed, the central question was no longer what was inside, it was why it had been sealed at all. For modern eyes, the absence of artifacts felt anticlimactic, even frustrating. But for the ancient Egyptians, emptiness could be as powerful as presence. To understand the void, scholars had to look not at what it lacked, but at what its very concealment might have meant. One school of thought focuses on the symbolic dimension of pyramid architecture. In Egyptian cosmology, voids were not wasted space, they were sacred zones of transition. Just as the night sky itself was a vast emptiness filled with stars, so too could a sealed chamber represent the cosmic space through which the pharaoh's soul traveled. Egyptologists have argued that this chamber may have functioned as a sacred void, a place designed never to be disturbed. Its silence itself an act of devotion. Sealing it ensured purity, untouched air, unbroken stone, and an eternal space for divine resonance. In this interpretation, the emptiness was the very essence of its purpose. Other scholars, however, tend towards a structural explanation. The corbelled ceiling and great size seem to allow the internal space to serve as a relieving area to redistribute the smashing weight above. It would not be without precedent either. Others exist above the king's chamber, built directly for that purpose. However, there is a difficulty with this purely engineering viewpoint: the secrecy. If it were merely about weight distribution, why then have it completely hidden away? Why not leave the entrance like they did elsewhere? The very fact that this chamber was sealed off from every known corridor suggests that it was more than just an engineering exercise to those who built it. The fact may well lie in a combination of the two. Egyptian builders were considerate of both physical construction and the spiritual. A chamber may represent scientific, factual, and technical solutions on one level, and symbolic ritual on the other level. This duality in function was nothing uncommon in their paradigm, where cosmic balance and structural stability were seen as one and the same. This void may have further served the purpose of stress relief, and as a sacred reservoir, a spiritual battery, if you like, sealed for maintaining its energy for eternity. This way, its silence becomes more articulate than any inscription could have been. But maybe the biggest teasing implication is that this chamber has not stood alone. If such an immense, hidden chamber could remain undiscovered for centuries, what else would lie buried somewhere within or beneath the Giza Plateau? Recently, ground-penetrating radar and electrical resistivity tomography have already revealed abnormalities west of the pyramid, an L-shaped structure and even a more profound cavity, perhaps connected structurally. Some Egyptologists theorize that they may conceal ritual complexes yet unknown.
Of the Great Pyramid in Egypt have been made. Researchers have been amazed.
Storage chambers, or even a larger part of a network under the ground, an architectural mirror beneath the sands. History just reminded us it can still keep a secret. If you want more deep dives like this, where scans, robots, and ancient intent collide, like, subscribe, and drop your theory in the comments. Sacred void, structural genius, or both. And when you're ready, watch the next video on your screen for another hidden chapter of the ancient world.